Hey guys, Alias here. This is a partial re-upload. I've also added the rest of the story onto the end. So if you are one of the 200 people that have seen the initial release of the Celestial Gearscape, you can skip to, I think it's going to be 1 hour and 21 minutes, 1 hour 22 minutes. I cleaned it up a lot and made it just flow better and sound more natural. I should have done that in the first place. If you want to just skip and get to where you get the new thing without any spoilers, skip to that time mark. It'll be on screen. Hope you guys enjoyed the story. It is definitely worth listening to again, but not much has really changed in the grand scope of things. You're not going to miss anything. We got one more book after this one, then we're done. Thanks, guys. Your battered form staggers forward, leaving behind the twilight-streaked glade. Each footfall sinks into the saturated earth, marked with the ichor of the dragon serpent. The blood congealing now in gelatinous, abysmal pools that exhale wisps of black vapor. The glade, once alive with indigo fog and shadow-wreathed vegetation, fades away as you move on. The path ahead is hemmed by twisted roots and towering statues of petrified bark. Their canopies choke out the last hints of twilight until the world around you is smothered in a cold pitch. Cautiously, you advance, wearied from the brutal struggle against the serpent's malformed evolution. Each inhalation claws at your lungs, thick with the residual fumes of the beast's passing. Yet ahead, a spectral glow rises, a thin, eerie radiance that cleaves through the gloom. The path ahead juts sharply upward, flanked by silent statues whose faces are worn down to ghastly versions of their once proud splendor. Though their eyes have been stripped of expression, and awareness seeps from them as if their empty gazes reach through the years to scrutinize your every step. Soon, you stumble into an ancient archway, its stones interlocking with an alien precision, polished by hands forgotten to all but the most primeval memories. A faint, unnatural light intensifies as the path widens, and before you looms a gearscape, a vast, blackened silhouette woven from intricate mechanisms, twisting orbs and colossal gears, set against an impossible white vastness, part hidden by the fog that climbs from the stagnant breath of the world's depths. The gearscape sprawls beyond mortal comprehension, its celestial rings casting half-seen shapes across the fog, towering and swirling. The ground beneath begins to resonate in sync with the titanic mechanisms of the gearscape, a rhythm that seems to drum not only beneath your feet but within your bones. And beneath you, the uneven stone instantly shifts to a polished surface of onyx, glimmering under the ghostly light, its surface holding reflections of stars unknown to mortal skies, constellations shifting, compelled by unknown forces to dance. And then a golden door appears before you, an enormous monolith of celestial engravings that shimmer as though fragments of ancient starlight have bled into the very metal. Some familiar, yet others so alien that they seem reaped from the dreams of lost gods. You reach out, fingers hovering before the door's lustrous surface, and you hesitate, your fingers drifting over the carvings, the sigils pulsating under your touch with a hunger that feels nearly tactile. A sense of unease unfurls along your skin, and then a sound like the grinding of some colossal bone. The door shifts, its slabs groaning against the onyx floor, dragging open with an effort that speaks of unwillingness, revealing a corridor beyond. There is a faint glow of phosphorescent light within the corridor. You step across the threshold, leaving the fading darkness of the twilight glade behind. The golden doors groan shut behind you, meeting with a resounding thud as they sever the last bits of twilight behind you. The silence that now greets you is profound. It's a stifling stillness, long lain undisturbed, buried in layers of dust. Each breath sends faint whispers of your presence through the chill air, stirred to life by your mere intrusion. The passage stretches into the wide expanse, walls lined with intricate patterns that twist and coil like veins. Obdurate power lingers in the air, sinking into the hollow of your chest. The faint glow grows stronger, in a sepulchral haze, casting strange effigies in grisly relief against the blackened stone floor. Figures, twisted and deformed by time, their eyes dark hollows, seem to follow your movement. Your vision adjusts slowly, revealing the corridor expanding into a vault, a cavernous chamber just beyond sight. Towering walls disappearing into the shadows above, dense and languid, clinging to every fissure, every crease of stone. Walking here is strange, not from the exertion, but from the resistance of the floor itself. Gravity is somehow amplified. Faint vibrations rise through the soles of your feet, slithering up your core like a serpent's binding. Murky shapes coil within the white gloom, shifting, amorphous entities that move like smoke in the air, stirring the tang of rust and ancient fungal metal. From the depths, a figure stirs, rising and sliding forward with an unnatural, soundless grace that tightens a knot in your gut. Robed in a fabric that ripples with an unearthly sheen, the figure seems to materialize from the fog itself, threads of their garment glinting as though threaded with the essence of forgotten stars. Within those folds, faint, shifting lines catch feeble light, suggesting tiny inlaid mechanisms hidden within, showing in a bronze and silvered pattern that seem to rotate with the figure's every move. This keeper of mechanisms emerges, a being who stands at the crossroads of life and automation. The keeper's face is a mask of seamless black gold metal, its surface etched with the constellations so old that they belong to a sky long erased from history. Symbols etched across the mask in intricate filigree, each one reconfiguring with every blink, never settling. The keeper's form drifts between states, a physicality that ripples like liquid metal, blurring the lines between flesh and construct. The keeper inclines their head toward you in a movement that feels neither welcoming nor hostile, but layered with an age-old intent. From the stillness, a voice grates forth, low and rasping, each word trailing the screech of metal dragged against metal.
Welcome, traveler. You stand at the threshold of the celestial gearscape, which serves as the universe's chronometer, regulating the flow of time and fate across realms, ensuring that each second, each cycle moves inexorably forward. Its gears weave together threads of destiny, binding creatures and worlds to their appointed paths with a precision that brooks no interference, no deviation from the cosmic design.
The mask's unyielding gaze dissects your essence with a stare that feels like the unfurling of an ancient ledger, listing each scar, each flaw, each weakness as a part of an inventory held by some nameless mechanical god. Compassion is absent, replaced by a precise adamant calculation. The keeper's slender arm extends, their movements too fluid to be mortal, and gestures towards the hulking construct at the chamber's far end, a machinery of eldritch complexity that spirals into the shadow depths above.
Align the spheres of the celestial engines. Awaken the gearscape, and the paths long sealed shall open themselves. But know this, to awaken the gearscape is to stir those that watch over it.
With that, the keeper steps aside, urging you to approach the eldritch machination. The celestial engine looms before you like the petrified skeleton of some primordial god, a relic forged in an age when stars were mere intentions scrawled across the cosmos. Its structure is a profane harmony of fractured rings and spiraling gears, spinning around a central gilded axis that evokes an arcane divinity. Each massive ring, scarred and corroded from eons of work, is etched with ruins in a language of symbols that twist and warp under your gaze. At the end of the delicate, spider-like arms hang dull amber orbs, lifeless yet poised in a symmetry, suspended and waiting for some long-neglected ritual to rekindle their spectral light. As you draw closer, the sheer vastness of the machine dawns on you, each gear and beam towering like the ossified remains of a mammoth titan halted mid-stride. The machine's burial ash clings to every surface, and debris is caught in the grooves of rusted cogs and joints. When your hand reaches for the first planetary gear's switch, your fingers meet a metal that is gelid, sheened with condensation that clings to your skin. The gears resist your touch as you pull, a rousing groan emanating from the depths as it stirs, forced from a slumber it did not wish to leave. A chill leaches into your bones as you squeeze the grip, but with a slow and agonizing turn, the gear begins to shift. The grinding screeches from the very framework, clambering through the metal in waves as the components resist the touch of your foreign hand. But with a final grating lock, the first gear aligns, and a bronzed, phosphorescent light trickles into the orb, coaxing the surface from a dull amber to a dim, warm glow. Faint threads of light radiate outward, winding through the gears in streams of liquefied starlight. And one by one, you work your way around the engine, each turn a struggle against the persistent dormancy. Gradually, however, each of the orbs shudder to life, each casting their pallid light as they fall into alignment, the glow brightening until it's constructed into a latticework of veins. A rhythmic tremor can be felt through the structure, like the first breaths of something ancient awakening in its iron shell. And at last, with a final heave, the last sphere snaps into place, and the entire engine roars to life, exhaling a cloud of musty gases as the gears above and below synchronize, spinning with a meticulous harmony. The orbs flare with their ghastly phosphorescence, their light now searing, obliterating the pale gloom, casting the chamber in harsh relief. Along the walls, red carvings pulse to life, calling to a time of cosmic balance shattered long before even the stars of your world were born. The engine's core emits a high-pitched whirring sound, and the orbs begin to spin dangerously fast as they orbit the structure. An intense radiance begins to build within the engine's core, and the gears pick up speed and the core grows brighter until it seems to release an energy and explosion of intense light. Brilliance floods the chamber, searing your sight with imprints of the otherworldly shapes and symbols, and the gearscape's awakening is burned into your retinas. You shield your eyes, but it does little to protect you. As quickly as it started, it stops, and the light recedes. You see the massive rings gliding in a juxtaposed symphony, each celestial body tracing invisible paths with meticulousness that transcends mortal means. To get too close to the monolithic machine would surely mean death, the sheer scale of the machine dwarfing you. Even with your best efforts, you wouldn't stand a chance against the momentum of any individual piece before you. The throbbing resonance of the activated gearscape fills the air with an acrid scent of unknown metals and the bitter staleness of a machine too long dormant. As the shadows recoil, you can sense countless eyes opening from the depths, their gaze fixated, watching the consequences of your intrusion with a starved curiosity. A metallic clatter draws your attention above, where new narrow walkways unfurl from obscurity, aligning with pathways newly opened. The walkways reach into the hidden recesses of the gearscape, suspended precariously over the yawning white void below, twisting with an organic elegance that speaks less of architecture and more of ancient life resurrected from the cosmic abyss. Your eyes follow these bridges as they coil deeper into the labyrinthian darkness, swallowed by the vastness. And suddenly a new sound begins, grinding and mechanical, that rips through the other sounds, pulling your gaze back to the threshold you crossed. From within the shadows, two shapes glide forward. They emerge like phantoms, cast from eldritch alloys, their forms plated with darkened brass and polished steel, constellations etched upon their frames as if crafted by the hands that knew heavens of a darker age. Their heads tilt, and their eye slits glinting with a cerulean glare, with a glacial, unfeeling intensity that slices through the chamber's murk, locking onto you with a presence that is utterly devoid of mercy. Their gray flesh bulges and stretches around plates of metal, amalgamates of aged machinery and rotting flesh. They advance in unison, every step timed with the precise ticking of inner gears, a cadence like the tolls of a doomsday clock. Their limbs pivot with fluid perfection, their every joint and piston a wonder of blasphemous engineering. You tighten your grip on the dreadhook, its familiar edge glinting with a dark promise. And without hesitation, you spring forward, the dreadhook swinging in a deadly sweep towards the first construct's neck. The blade slices through the dense air with a whistle, yet the construct's arm snaps upward with unnatural speed, blocking the attack. The impact sends a deafening metallic clang reverberating through the chamber like the echo of a cosmic anvil. Sparks erupt from the collision, momentarily illuminating the sentinel's expressionless visage. As you attempt to follow through, your foot slips on the treacherously slick metal surface, coated with a residue that feels like oil. The dreadhook jolts free from your grasp, spiraling through the air, before it clatters over the edge of a walkway and tumbles into the endless void. Its descent is swallowed by the abyss. In an instant, the second sentinel lunges. Its arm extends with a piston's force, the limb reconfiguring mid-motion as the gear shifts and rotates, revealing a monolithic blade forged from a material darker than the void, a serrated edge that it drinks all light. The blade arcs towards you, a sweep of certain death. Driven by instinct, you twist and drop, your body flattening against the walkway as the weapon cleaves the air above you, cutting instead into the metal walkway with a resounding impact that shakes the floor. A wave of cold, oily fear pulses through your veins, but survival is a call you cannot deny. Your gaze flickers down to the twilight crown at your ankle, its dormant, shimmering scales refracting the dim light in an iridescent ripple. Desperation sharpens your movements as the sentinel raises its arm again, gears grinding with old power, readying another strike. With a burst of intuition, you will the twilight crown into action, your mind reaching for whatever latent power lies coiled within. A sharp heat burns up your leg, a searing pulse of energy that seems to latch onto your nerves. The blackened scars covered in scales along your calf ripple, contorting in response as they twist and then crystallize into a shimmering cascade of scales, each one glistening with an edge as sharp as glass until your entire leg is covered. With a sweep of your leg, you strike out, aiming the edge of your heel towards the approaching sentinel. The scales extend mid-motion, lengthening into a razor's edge protrusion that rakes across the sentinel's metallic arm with a screeching slice. Sparks burst out from the contact as the scales dig into its alloyed frame, leaving a deep, jagged gash in the polished armor. A faint, cold radiance trails behind your movement, as though the twilight itself lingers, momentarily frozen in each arc. The sentinel falters, stumbling backwards. It holds, recalculating, its movement stuttering as the damage to its arm sends conflicting signals through the inner mechanisms. You press forward, unwilling to lose the moment. The scales along your ankle pulse with a peculiar twilight energy, spreading further up your leg as if eager to follow your intentions. With newfound resolve, you jump hard against the increased gravity, and yet you soar above the construct's head. You bring your leg down like a guillotine, the scales transforming into a jagged spike that stabs into the sentinel's form like the fangs of the serpent dragon. The construct crumples under the power of the strike. But your attack barely slows the other sentinel's persistent approach. Gears whir, its blade arm unfurling into a brutal clawed vise aimed directly at your midsection. Pain is inevitable, but a vicious, grim smile curves your lips as you turn your attention to the symbiotic crown on your left wrist. You brace yourself, gripping the thought of its power, knowing the cost you're about to pay. A primal, searing agony seizes your wrist as the roots from the symbiotic crown twist out, writhing with a life of their own. They snake forth from your flesh, curling and then entangling, eager to taste blood. They surge toward the approaching sentinel, stabbing into its joints, sinking deep into the crevices between metal plates and invasive alloys. The roots tighten, drawing a vice-like grip of their own around the limb as the construct's momentum grinds to a shuddering halt. Gears screech and whine as it struggles against the immobilizing roots. The pain thrashes through you, lighting every nerve like molten iron as the roots claim your agony as their fuel. The sentinel's claw snaps shut just inches from your torso, its fury silent yet palpable in the clicks and whirs of its strained mechanisms. A dark ancient hunger awakens in the circlet around your right wrist, like a breathless whisper in a language long forgotten. The bone fragments pulse and then tighten around your arm, carvings glowing with a sepulchral light. You raise your hand, feeling the icy grasp of death gather in your fingertips as the roots shiver in recognition of the bone sovereign's crown. With a flick of your wrist, the roots surge with a newfound life, expanding and fusing with its frame, siphoning vitality from the twisted amalgam of flesh and machine. Dark vines crawl from the roots, pressing deeper into its mechanical flesh, forcing it to bend and contort, draining the faint remnants of life stored within. The construct shudders, its blue gaze dimming as the bone sovereign's crown devours the fractured essence within, until the cerulean glow in its eyes fades to black. With a tortured screech, it collapses, its limbs twisting under the dark energies until it is little more than a heap of mangled metal and twisted gears, faint tendrils of necrotic mist rising from the broken form. The other construct, sensing the loss, halts its advance, its gaze shifting with a slight, almost hesitant motion. A flicker of recognition, perhaps, of the power of destroyed kin. But still it does not retreat. The remaining construct takes a single, ominous step forward, blade poised. But you are ready. The scales of the twilight crown shimmering down your leg, the roots of the symbiotic crown coiled like vipers. With a violent lunge, the construct charges, its blade cleaving down in a gleaming crescent. You twist, evading by a hair's breadth, but the blow smashes into the floor, sending fragments of stone and metal flying. The blow tears through the walkway itself, and suddenly the ground underfoot shifts, the brittle edge of the broken floor giving way beneath you. As the construct resets for another strike, you deftly leap to the side, flinging yourself into the darkness along a narrow ledge, a claustrophobic space that shies away from the construct's deadly reach. The whir of its gears reverberates through the walls, but its heavy frame and wide stance make pursuit into this cramped corridor almost impossible. The path widens before you as you move forward, and then it opens into a small, shadowed alcove that's hidden from the rest of the gearscape. Your eyes adjust to the dim light, and you notice the faint glow emanating from the far side of the room. Cautiously, you approach, and see a crumpled corpse adorned in a strange, heavy armor. There, resting atop its lap, is a weapon of exotic, otherworldly beauty, some kind of mace. It lies untouched, casting a soft yet steady glow, a pale radiance that seems woven from the threads of celestial light. The metal of its head is a smooth, blue-gold over black material, faintly iridescent, like the colors of the nighttime sky compressed and made tangible. Runes wrap around the mace's handle in delicate spiral patterns, faintly alight with the spectral shimmer. Most notably are the flanges of the blade, and they are suspended, floating around the metal ball at the tip of the weapon, spinning in a slow orbit like planets around the sun. A slight energy jumps between the head of the mace and the orbiting flanges, and you can only assume what that means. The moment your fingers tighten around the flanged mace, the runes along the shaft blaze brighter. A surge of vigor floods your body, a celestial current that reaches into every tired muscle, every aching bone, as though recharging you from the inside out. The necromantic scars along your legs glimmer in response, and the twilight crown merging faintly with the mace's starbound energy, wreathing you in an iridescent aura. And then from the darkness behind you, a new whirring sound of gears fills the air. The remaining construct distracts your presence once more, its cold cerulean eyes piercing the shadows as it strides into the chamber. It is damaged but ruthless, its arms still bearing the scars from the symbiotic crown's vicious roots. But now you have this mace, the star-forged mace. A calm focus settles over you as you raise the weapon, feeling its alien weight aligning with your intuition, its radiance slicing through the darkness. The construct halts, seeming to recognize the new threat before it, and for the first time, you sense something that might be hesitation in its movements. Seeing it feels the presence of the ancient star metal and the power it harbors. Without holding back, you dart forward and swing the star-forged mace in a strike that sings through the air with a resonance like the ringing of a bell. The head of the mace connects with the construct's chest, and a bright flare of light erupts from the impact, casting the chamber in ghastly hues. The force reverberates through its frame, tearing deep gashes into its alloyed shell, stars embedded in the mace transferring their radiant heat into the mechanical beast. The construct staggers, its gears clashing in chaotic protest, the celestial energy of the star-forged mace destabilizing its core functions. Ribbons of smoke escape its torso as you press forward, your swings guided by a force beyond yourself, the mace advancing with the strength of distant galaxies. Each strike lands with a blinding flash, celestial fire searing through the metal and bone alike, reducing the construct's once indomitable frame to a smoking ruin with each blow. And at last, the construct collapses, crumpling to the floor in a heap of twisted metal, defeated. The faint pulse of its cerulean gaze fades into darkness, and an eerie silence fills the chamber, broken only by the faint hum of the star-forged mace as it vibrates in your hand, sensing its purpose fulfilled. But there's no rest for the wicked. The sound of approaching footsteps grows louder, heavy and deliberate. New clockwork constructs have joined the search, their steps echoing along the walkways that wind through the celestial engine's chamber. Armed with the star-forged mace, you ready yourself and step back out of the alcove, your breath steadying as you adopt a new mantra for yourself. Only those who adapt will survive what lies ahead. Ahead, the path diverges into a network of bridges and walkways,
each suspended precariously over an abyss that swallows the scant light into its tenebrious depths. The structures defy conventional geometry, spiraling and contorting in defiance of natural law. The very air hums with latent energy, a static charge that trickles across your skin, raising the fine hairs on the back of your neck. And as you tread cautiously along the narrow bridge, the metal groans beneath your weight, a mournful lament that reverberates into the void below. The bridge sways subtly, so each step must be measured and deliberate to avoid disturbing the precarious balance. And above, immense gears and orbs of tarnished brass rotate with ponderous grace. Wisps of mist coil around them, illuminated by the glinting of starlight captured within the gearscape's grand design. A subtle shift in the gloom catches your eye, too smooth to be mere happenstance. The shapes emerge gradually, deliberate as if the shadows themselves were exhaling them into being. Their arrival brings a palpable tension, a stillness that prickles at your senses like the moments before a blade falls. From the murk glide the clockwork sentinels, their forms a cruel mirage of brass and blackened skin, their contours shimmering in the harsh glow of the cerulean light spilling from their lifeless eyes, their synchronized steps echoing faintly as though the very air is drawn taut by the mechanical grace. Instinct urges you to retreat, but the bridge allows no such luxury. Flanked by the abyss on either side, your options narrow to a singular point of confrontation. The star-forged mace pulses in your hand, sensing the encroaching threat, its light intensifying to reveal the intricate patterns etched upon the construct's armor. The leading construct halts a mere dozen paces away, and with a fluid motion it raises an arm that unfolds into a gleaming blade, the edge shimmering with an otherworldly sheen. The air around it distorts subtly, a heatless mirage that suggests energies beyond the mundane. Before the construct can strike, you channel the residual power of the twilight crown. The iridescent scales along your leg flare to life, a searing pain lances through your limbs as the scales extend, transforming into a razor-edge protrusion. With a swift, sweeping kick, you unleash an arc of twilight energy that slices through the air towards the sentinel. The attack impacts the sentinel's blade with a resounding clang, sparks erupting as twilight energy meets eldritch alloy. The force pushes the automaton back a step, its footing momentarily unsettled. Seizing the brief advantage, you advance, the star-forged mace whirring in a deadly orbit. Each swing carves luminous trails through the air, the mace's flanged head emitting a harmonic thrumming. The sentinel recovers with a mechanical efficiency as its compatriots close in from behind. They encircle you with calculated tactics, blades and implements of arcane design poised to strike from all angles. The odds stack heavily against you. Drawing upon the symbiotic crown, you brace for the excruciating pain it demands. Roots burst forth from your wrist once more, writhing tendrils that lash out towards the nearest construct. They wrap around its limbs, tightening with a parasitic fervor, sapophoric roots seeking to drain the automaton. The pain is excruciating, each jolt of the root sending shards of splintered ice tearing through your veins. The ensnared construct struggles against the bonds, and its movements become erratic, joints seizing as the symbiotic crown saps its energy. The remaining construct still press their attack, undeterred by the comrade's plight. Blades slice through the air, forcing you into a desperate dance along the narrow bridge. You evade with a grace previously unknown to you, and you realize your legs are now covered in twilight-crowned scales. Movement has become easier than it was before the amplified gravity of the gearscape, but your lapse in focus causes a misstep. A poorly planted step sends your foot skittering along the slick metal, nearly over the edge into the abyss, yawning hungrily below. Regaining balance, you barely parry a thrust aimed at your torso, the star-forged mace absorbing the impact with a deep clang. The force reverberates up your arm, numbing muscles already fatigued by combat. The constructs coordinate their assaults with dispassionate efficiency, exploiting every opening. One feints high while the other strikes low, their blades singing through the air with a lethal unison. The constraints of the bridge limit your mobility, each evasive maneuver bringing you precariously close to the edge. And amidst the onslaught, an idea crystallizes, a risky gambit that might tip the scales. You focus inward, reaching deep into the dark wellspring of power that is the Bone Sovereign's crown. The circlet tightens around your wrist, bone fragments digging into your flesh as the necromantic energy courses through you. Shadows coalesce at your feet, rising and twisting into ephemeral forms. With a guttural exertion, you direct these wraith-like apparitions towards your foes. They surge forward, spectral limbs entwining with metallic ones, sowing confusion among the ranks. The constructs falter, their algorithms struggling to parse the incorporeal threat. Seizing the momentary disruption, you unleash a devastating swing of the star-forged mace. The weapon connects with the construct's torso, the impact releasing a burst of stellar light that fractures its armor. Fragments of metal scatter like meteors, the automaton collapsing in a cacophony of clattering gears and severed circuits. Exhaustion soon gnaws at the edge of your consciousness, the tolls of wielding such power exacting their due. Your vision blurs, the surroundings tinged with a haze that loses the line between reality and illusion. The shadows seem to writhe with greater intensity, unfamiliar shapes flickering at the periphery of sight. The remaining constructs recover, their attention snapping back to you with renewed focus as the Bone Sovereign's raids disperse. They adjust their stances, adapting to your tactics with an unnerving rapidity. One raises an arm, and a compartment slides open to reveal a barrel that crackles with a white-blue arcane energy. A high-pitched whirring builds, signaling an imminent discharge. You dart forward, closing the distance as the construct unleashes a searing beam that scorches the space you occupied moments prior. The heat singes the back of your neck, and the acrid stench of ozone filling the air. Within a heartbeat, you're upon the automaton, driving the head of the star-forged mace into its core. The impact detonates in a blinding flash, obliterating the sentinel in a shower of incandescent shards. The bridge trembles under the cumulative strain of battle, the structural integrity compromised by the destructive forces. Cracks spiderweb across the hardened metal surface, ominous groans now emanating from the supports. The entire span threatens to collapse into the void. With no time to spare, you sprint toward the far end of the bridge. The remaining sentinels give chase. Pieces of the bridge begin to give way, panels dropping into the abyss with echoed crashes that hint at the unknown depths. A final leap carries you onto solid ground as the bridge behind you collapses, the sentinels plummeting soundlessly into the darkness. You land hard, knees buckling, the star-forged mace skittering across the floor. You fall forward and slide across the slick floor before coming to a rest. You roll over to your back, catching your breath and recovering, chest heaving. After some time, once you've collected yourself, you rise unsteadily. The gears of the gearscape chamber echo through the hall, resonating with the vibration that hums up through your feet and settles in your chest like a weighty expectation. The tones shift and a new vibration finds its way to you, a thin, high note that shivers through the air like the ring of a silver bell, somehow lighter and more complex than the machinery's regular song. Intrigued, you follow the sound, winding through a sequence of corridors that you would swear were new, or at least seldom opened. The walls here are veined with crystalline threads, their edges tinged with blue light that pulses and fades, each pulse a call that draws you forward. The sound becomes clearer as you walk, a melodic, crystalline charm woven from what almost feels like voices, although they sing in a tongue you do not recognize. The path widens, and you emerge into a vast circular chamber with black-white walls that shimmer with the most unfamiliar constellations. The air is charged with a strange vitality, like a static clinging to your skin. The stars mapped across the vaulted dome ceiling are so bright and intricate, as though their very being were captured, and as you stare, the constellations shift, aligning into shapes and symbols of ancient zodiacs. Ahead, in the center of the chamber, you notice something else strange. A circle of broken stones, set within an intricately carved floor of glyphs and arcane patterns. A radiant energy pulses at the center, small and steady. As you step forward, the stones flare with a gentle morning sun hue, a welcoming warmth that stands out in the otherwise mechanical chill of the gearscape. The light from each of the stones arcs towards the center, where the shape seems to form within the glow. Something small and nestled in sleep. Sensing your approach, it begins to stir. The air grows heavier, suffused with a quivering tension that presses into your skin like a static. The radiant shape at the chamber's heart begins to expand, its light spilling out in iridescent waves, casting every surface in the hues of a shattered rainbow. And you feel the vibrations now, not only in the stones, but in your bones, an indicative whine that carries the melody both profound and alien, as though the very stars were singing a forgotten hymn. And as you steady yourself, the ground beneath you begins to shift subtly, the stones warming underfoot as though touched by the distant sun. Lines of luminescent energy carve their way across the walls, tracing the intricate constellations, flickering and rearranging themselves as though recounting ancient tales. The twisting shadows on the walls cease their chaotic dance, instead blending into graceful and deliberate forms. Figures or glyphs you cannot tell, but they move with purpose, their motions synchronized with the pulsing light. A sudden surge of brilliance erupts from the chamber's center, forcing you to shield your eyes. When the intensity fades, the air is no longer still, but alive with motion. Delicate motes of light drift like ash caught in a gentle breeze, each one humming faintly as it orbits a central shape. These motes converge, layering themselves upon one another, each flicker of light an offering to the being that begins to emerge. The shapes on the walls pause, their gazes, if they could be called such, turning as if to witness the miracle alongside you. It is then that you notice the scent, subtle and ethereal, like the memory of wildflowers in a forgotten meadow under a twilight sky. It carries with it a strange nostalgia, pulling at fragments of your thoughts, stirring feelings of awe and melancholy. The radiance intensifies again, not blinding this time, but a warm, enveloping, a cosmic embrace that makes the vastness of the chamber feel impossibly small. And then at last, the creature reveals itself. It rises from its resting place, and as it moves, you catch the faintest glimpses of the constellations that had formed on the walls. They are mirrored along its almost fox-like body, scattered across its back and down its small rounded legs. Yet it does not approach. It watches you intently, its gaze holding a depth that is both curious and cautious, as though it too is trying to make sense of this moment. And for a heartbeat, neither of you move. The chamber's quiet deepens, intensifying the pulsing glow, casting a dreamlike silence around you. And then, just as you decide to step forward, a surge of energy sweeps through the room. The stones around you flash brilliantly, and you feel the hairs on your arms lift with the static charge. From the creature, a soft, shimmering mist spills forth, spiraling outward and enveloping you in a sphere of starlight. The mist feels cool, and within it you see shapes, echoes of distant realms and skies long forgotten, tiny fragments of galaxies flickering in the haze, each whispering to you with a life of its own. A low hum grows from within the mist, forming words that hover just out of reach. You try to focus, but the words seem to slip, shimmering into fragments. It is then that the creature speaks, or perhaps sings, a sound soft as a whisper, but ringing with a power that seems to bend the air around it. The tones shift, becoming a language, and you somehow recognize in the marrow of your bones, a song that speaks without words yet fills your mind with meaning. You have come, not from the stars, but from another. And yet you are bound here, drawn by the breath of the universe, seeking what even the stars have forgotten. Its head tilts, and as it does, galaxies seem to swirl in its eyes, shifting to show you fragments of worlds long past. Its gaze holds yours, piercing yet not unkind. The creature speaks again, its voice a blend of stars and silence. I am a witness of forgotten paths, the companion of those who walk where the stars do not dare tread. Long have I waited, holding vigil over the forgotten songs of this place, and now it seems I have been found. A strange pulse beats through your chest, and as you listen, your skin tingles with the force of the creature's words. The light around you seems to condense, growing warmer, wrapping around your form like the embrace of something much larger and something infinite. The creature steps forward, its nose lifted slightly as it studies you. You feel the weight of its gaze, an awareness as old as the stars themselves. Its presence hums with a power that feels once protective and probing, as though it knows the paths you have yet to walk. Gently, you extend your hand toward it. The creature watches, eyeing you curiously, and then, with an elegance that defies words, it steps closer, pressing its cool nose to your outstretched fingers. The contact sends a spark of warmth racing up your arm, settling in your chest with a sensation that brings with it a memory not your own. Visions of realms far beyond mortal reach, of a vast emptiness stretching across time and space, then filled only with stars. You watch as the galaxies form and spin and dance. The ebb and flow of time dilates and constricts. Planets are birthed and stars collapse.
Universes fold upon themselves in a possible amount of times, and through all of this energy, harnessed by something beyond the physical, the creature before you is created. The illusion breaks, and your awareness comes cascading back to your body, the starbound creature's head resting in your palm. "I am yours. You are mine," it murmurs, the words settling into your mind. "We are bound, and in this bond, we shall traverse the worlds of shadow and light together." The creature's purr is a soft hum that vibrates with the power of 1,000 falling stars. You understand now that this being, this cosmic familiar, is more than a guide. It is a living memory of the universe, a creature that has witnessed countless lifetimes, waiting for the right soul to share its path.
You rise to your feet, and the familiar takes its place alongside you. In silence, you take your first steps together, your new companion padding quietly at your side, leaving faint trails of stardust. The stones around you pulse one last time, and the mist disperses, but the warmth of the bond remains, carrying you forward into the unknown. Before you, the path diverges into 3 distinct trails, each steeped in an ominous allure. The first spirals upward, curling like a serpent toward a towering rise bathed in radiant gold. The light pulses faintly, each shine teasing the edge of revelation, yet its brilliance carries the weight of something more, a vast intelligence ready to flay unprepared minds. The second plunges sharply downward, its jagged edges leading into the throbbing maw of the gearscape's depths. From below comes the roar of chaotic machinery, a primordial noise that seeps into your bones, a warning that stirs primal instincts. The abyss churns with untamed power, promising destruction as much as transformation. The third stretches into a crystalline bridge, its edges lined with conduits that flicker faintly, like the dimming remnants of stars devoured long ago. Beyond the bridge lies the astrarium, its arched gateway alive with swirling celestial projections. The first path glows with the allure of understanding, the second path with the primal challenge of survival, and the third remains neutral and unsettling, its calm masking the unknown. Beside you, the starbound familiar moves closer, its starlit body shimmering with liquid constellations. The creature hums, a harmonious sound that vibrates through the air, cutting cleanly through the grinding cacophony of gears. It gazes toward the upward path. The ground beneath your feet trembles, the vibrations speaking the displeasure of your hesitation within the gearscape. Somewhere within its vast mechanisms, you feel the stirrings of that ancient awareness, the one that tracks your every hesitation, feeding on your indecision. The familiar nudges your hand, its fur cool as the night sky. Its urging is silent but insistent. Your fingers tighten around the star-forged mace, the celestial weapon also chilled in your grip. Its orbiting flanges spin faster, casting ethereal sparks of light onto the spiraling gears above. You take the first step upward, your boots clanging against the worn metal of the spiral path. The golden light intensifies as you ascend, every step pulling you higher into its luminous embrace. Shadows crawl along the railing, twisting unnaturally with each flicker of light. Strange glyphs etched into the metal shimmer faintly, their forms rearranging themselves under your gaze. You resist the urge to linger on them, each symbol tugging at your mind like a dangerous secret, enticing yet deadly. Still higher you climb, the air thinning and quivering with the heatless light. The constructs above emerge larger, its alien architecture suspended by gyros that spin with perfect accuracy. Rings of radiant metal orbit its core, glowing veins of molten gold pulsing through the vast mechanisms. The sight is mesmerizing, each motion impossibly intricate, as though the construct itself breathes with a godlike intelligence. The starbound familiar stays close, its light casting fleeting patterns across the moving gears. The golden luminescence above begins to bleed into the environment, turning the railings and spiraling path into a mosaic of radiant hues. The warmth of the light is deceptive, masking a latent power that probes at the edge of your mind, testing for cracks. As you near the stair's apex, the atmosphere shifts. The air is charged with an energy that feels almost alive. You sense something watching, the vast intelligence, unseen yet suffocating in its presence. The golden construct shudders slightly, and the metal beneath your feet acknowledges your approach. The familiar halts, its glowing eyes fixed on the radiant monolith ahead, You steady your breath, feeling the weight of the star-forged mace in your hand. You take another step forward, the light washing over you in waves, and the gearscape groans in approval, its vast mechanical voice rumbling like the bones of the cosmos being set into motion. The golden light floods over you, no longer simply illuminating but engulfing, pouring into your skin as though the air itself seeks entry into your essence. Each step upward draws you closer to the massive construct, its radiant body revealing finer details that defy comprehension. The rings orbiting its core do not only spin, they dance, each motion impossible to predict, guided by some ineffable force. Veins of liquid light coil through the gyros, their movements mimicking the flow of blood through a living being. The starbound familiar pauses at your side, its shimmering body vibrating with the radiant construct above. Its constellation-filled eyes shift rapidly, charting patterns that reflect the motions of the colossal rings. It does not move forward. Instead, it looks at you, offering a silent challenge or perhaps a warning. The path beneath your feet shifts, the spiraling metal expanding and contracting like the lung of some mechanical giant. Each breath you take feels shallow, filtering through the ancient intent of the construct. The glyphs on the railing pulse now, glowing brighter with every step, their meaning tantalizingly close, like hints on the edge of understanding. The final stretch of the spiral path is narrower. The golden light is so intense that it blurs the edges of your vision. When you step onto the precipice, the construct looms directly before you, its massive rings towering above like celestial titans bound in eternal motion. A faint tremor courses through the metal beneath your feet, as though the construct senses your arrival and acknowledges it. Your gaze locks onto the core of the construct, a spherical void suspended within the rings, its surface impossibly black, devouring the light around it. The void pulses faintly, its surface rippling with veins of incandescent gold. The sight claws at your mind, pulling at the edges of reason, urging you to look deeper, but instinct halts you. To stare too long into the sphere feels like an invitation to dissolve, to have every thread of your being unwound and rewoven into the fabric of the gearscape itself. A sudden shift in the atmosphere freezes you. The rings slow, their movements deliberate and purposeful as though responding to an unheard command. The vibrations beneath your feet intensify, growing sharper, and the air quivers with an audible hum. You brace yourself, gripping the star-forged mace tightly. The weapon responds, its orbiting flanges spinning faster, their spectral light piercing through the golden glow. From within the orbital void, something stirs. At first, it is only a faint ripple across the surface of the sphere. Then the ripple grows, expanding outward in waves, each one carrying an oppressive pressure that settles heavily in your chest. The rings around the construct accelerate, their motions chaotic yet strangely synchronized, light arcs between them, forming a lattice of radiant energy that crackles and hisses like a living thing. The starbound familiar steps closer, its fur bristling as its soft glow intensifies. It emits a low harmonic hum that resonates through its bones, a warning that vibrates to the marrow of your very being. You can feel its tension, its reluctance to approach the core, yet it stays by your side, a flicker of loyalty in the face of what comes next. The orb pulses one final time before quickly splitting open, a jagged seam of light tearing across its surface, dividing the orb into what looks like a floating eye from which spectacular gold and red light escapes. From the rift emerges a figure of radiant machinery, its form humanoid yet poorly exaggerated. Its limbs are elongated, jointed with impossibly intricate mechanisms, every movement releasing a faint cascade of golden sparks. Its head is featureless, a blank mask of polished metal reflecting the light of the construct. Across its chest, glowing glyphs writhe, shifting too quickly to decipher, their meanings locked with an ancient language of power and intent. The figure steps forward, its movements impossibly fluid for something so clearly constructed. The void behind it closes with a deafening crack, leaving only silence. The figure looks about the room until it spots you. You hold your breath as it tilts its head, examining you, and then it raises an arm. The limb unfurls like a blooming flower of metal and light, revealing a bladed staff that crackles with a raw energy. It points the weapon at you, and in that moment you understand. The star-forged mace glows brighter in your hand, its energy surging, eager to clash with the warden. The starbound familiar lets out a soft, chiming cry, its starlit eyes fixed on the being. Its presence is a simple reassurance amidst the rising tension. The warden moves with an unexpected speed, closing the distance between you in a single fluid motion. Its staff cracks downward, a slash of radiant energy cutting through the air, You barely evade the strike, the blade screeching as it tears through the metal floor, sending up a shockwave rippling outward. Sparks rain down as you retaliate, swinging the star-forged mace upward with all your strength. The flanged head connects with the warden's arm, and the impact releases a burst of celestial light that staggers it. The warden recovers instantly, mechanical yet imbued with an almost predatory grace. It pivots, its staff spinning in a dazzling circle that forces you back. Each strike comes faster than the last, a ruthless assault designed to overwhelm you. You parry desperately, the star-forged mace meeting each blow with a resonance that reverberates through the chamber. The gold-black orb watches silently, its rings spinning faster as the battle unfolds. You can feel its gaze, an unfathomable intelligence weighing your every action, every decision. It is not rooting for your survival, nor does it desire your death. It simply observes, a being of pure judgment, indifferent to the outcome. The starbound familiar darts forward, a streak of starlight that distracts the warden for a fraction of a second. It is enough. You pivot, swinging the mace in a wide semicircle that slams into the warden's torso. The force drives it back, golden light spilling from the fractured mechanisms along its chest. Sparks erupt from the wound, and the glyphs on its body flicker and dim. But the warden does not falter. Its blank face tilts back toward you, and the staff in its hand begins to glow, the energy building to a blinding crescendo. You brace yourself, star-forged mace spinning in your hand as the power builds in response. The gearscape around you crackles, the air thick with the tension of opposing forces poised to collide. The warden lunges first, his staff slicing through the air with a keening wail that shatters the stillness. The golden arcs of the weapon leave trails of light seared into your vision, forcing you to rely on instinct as much as sight. The star-forged mace sizzles with the energy in your grip, its spinning flanges trailing threads of celestial fire as you meet the assault head-on. The first strike glances off the warden's elongated arm, sparks cascading like fragments of stars. The force of the impact reverberates up your arm, threatening to unseat your grip. You push through the shock, twisting to avoid the counterstrike as the warden's staff crashes into the floor, sending shards of molten metal into the air. The blast catches your shoulder, the heat blistering your skin as the scales of the twilight crown radiate a faint protective shimmer. The chamber itself reacts to the battle, the golden rings above spinning faster, releasing pulses of energy that ripple outward. Each pulse seems to pull at you, your body swaying involuntarily towards the construct's radiant core. The starbound familiar darts around the periphery of the fight, its luminous form casting erratic shadows that dance across the walls. The warden presses its advantage, moving with a speed that defies physical logic, its elongated limbs a blur of metal and light. It strikes again, the staff slicing upward towards your midsection with a dialed precision. You spin away, narrowly evading the blow, and retaliate with a downward swing of the star-forged mace. The flanged head connects with the warden's chest, releasing a burst of radiant energy that sends it skidding back. The force carves a shallow trench into the floor, the metal screeching in protest as the warden regains its balance. The glyphs on its chest flicker again, the light dimming momentarily before flaring back to life, brighter and more frenzied than before. The warden observes the injuries and then lifts its head, its featureless face catching the light of the construct above. The warden raises its staff high, and the weapon splits along its length into segmented, rotating blades. Each segment glows with a molten brilliance, the edges vibrating with enough force to shear through metal. The air shimmers with heat as the warden brings the weapon down in a sweeping strike. You dive to the side, the force of the blow carving a molten gash into the floor, where you stood just moments before. The warden predicts this and chases you through the dive, the whirring blades never slowing down. The starbound familiar drops forward, a streak of starlight that collides with the warden's chest, the impact sending the warden staggering, its limbs flailing as it struggles to maintain balance, caught completely off guard. The familiar rebounds gracefully, landing beside you, its starlit eyes meet yours, and for a fleeting moment, you feel a surge of kindred defiance that pierces through the haze of battle. You rise, the star-forged mace glowing brighter in your hands, the weapon's celestial energy resonating. With a shout, you charge, the mace spinning in a wide arc. The flanges strike the warden's staff, shattering one of the rotating blades and releasing a shockwave that ripples through the chamber. The force sends both you and the warden stumbling. The acrid tang of molten metal and ozone fumates the air. The warden recovers first, its staff retracting into a single seamless weapon. It lunges forward, its movements growing unpredictable and more desperate. The glyphs on the chest pulse in time with its strikes, their light casting jagged patterns across the walls. You parry each blow, the star-forged mace absorbing the force of the warden's attacks with evocative droning that echoes throughout the chamber. But the warden's speed remains unmatched. A feint catches you off guard, the staff grazing your side and sending a jolt of searing pain through your body. You stagger, your vision blurring as the heat of the blow burns through your cloak. The starbound familiar lets out a sharp, melodic cry, darting forward to intercept the warden's next strike. Its luminous form collides with the staff, deflecting the blow and giving you a precious second to recover. You grit your teeth, the pain sharpening your focus, and with a surge of effort, you grip the star-forged mace tightly and channel the power of the Twilight Crown. The iridescent scales along your leg flare to life, emitting an opalescent glow that spreads up your body. The star-forged mace responds, its flanges spinning faster as the threads of twilight energy weave into the weapon's celestial core. The warden hesitates, its blank face shifting, sensing the shift in power. You take the opportunity, diving forward with a powerful swing. The mace connects with the warden's neck, the impact releasing a blinding explosion of light and starlight that engulfs the chamber. The warden's glyphs flicker and dim, the energy within sputtering like a dying flame. The construct above shudders violently, its rings spinning out of sync as the golden light intensifies. The warden stumbles, its limbs jerking erratically, and then it collapses to one knee. Sparks of molten gold spilled from its fractured body, pooling on the floor in glimmering rivulets. But the fight is not over. The warden, fractured and faltering, raises its head one final time. Its staff, now cracked and sparking erratically, ignites with a ferocious blaze. The seams of the chest split further, groaning like tortured metal as they reveal a core of unearthly radiance. A sun imprisoned in a cage of gears and gilded plates. The warden trembles, its movements stuttering, yet there is a determination in the way it rights itself, its will unbroken despite the damage you've inflicted. The pressure in the room mounts unbearably. The chamber vibrates with an ominous energy, the air becoming thick and choking as heat radiates from the warden's exposed core. The glyphs flicker wildly, their meanings indecipherable yet laden with intent. You stagger as your footing feels tenuous, the floor beneath you shifting with the rising intensity. The starbound familiar hovers beside you, its luminous form pulsating with energy. It lets out a resonant cry that fills the space, and you feel an unspoken bond tighten between the two of you. As though sensing your resolve, the familiar merges its light with the star-forged mace. A celestial glow wrapping around the weapon like liquid fire. The twilight and starlight energies swirl together, coalescing into a singular radiant force. The warden lunges, a final desperate charge, its staff swinging in a wide arc, the energy at its tips scorching the air and leaving a jagged wake of fire in its path. You meet the assault head-on, muscles straining as you swing the star-forged mace with every ounce of strength you possess. The impact is cataclysmic, a collision of opposing forces that ignites the chamber in a supernova of light and sound. The detonation is a symphony of destruction, a blinding conflagration of white and gold obliterates the chamber's oppressive darkness, and you are flung backwards as if the gods themselves sought to hurl you from their domain. The world becomes noise, a tortured scream of the warden, the shriek of buckling metal, and the deep resonant groan of something primordial breaking under the weight of its own existence. When the light retreats, the silence that follows is a palpable weight, a suffocating stillness broken only by the faint hum of the star-forged mace still clenched in your trembling grip. You force yourself upright, pain radiating from every fiber in your being. Before you, the warden lies scattered in ruin, its once imposing form reduced to fragments of molten, glowing metal. Its core, that radiant heart of power, is now a flickering ember, struggling against its own encroaching oblivion. The starbound familiar presses against your side, its gentle warmth grounding you in an aftermath of chaos. Its soft melodic chime reverberates faintly in the charged air. Above, the golden rings that once spun in frenzied disarray now glide to an eerie waltz. The cacophony of battle is replaced by the subdued rhythm of perfect unnatural synchronization. At the chamber's edge, the monolith awakens again, not in fury, but in revelation. A pathway, smooth and gleaming as if freshly born from the void, unfurls before you. The surface shimmers with kaleidoscopic iridescence, untouched by the ruins surrounding it, as though it had been waiting, untouched by time, for this precise moment. It stretches forward, a beckoning promise, or a warning. Your breath comes shallow and labored as you steady yourself, Every step toward the path feels like penance, the adrenaline coursing through your veins giving way to the bone-deep weariness. The starbound familiar nudges you gently, its starlit gaze suffusing with a quiet insistence. It knows what you do, that there is no turning back, not now, not ever. The air hums faintly with the echoes of its wrath, and the chamber seems to exhale, releasing you from its own grip. As you step onto the glassy path, the polished surface resonates faintly beneath your boots, almost alive, responding to your presence with rippling waves of light. The weight of the air around you deepens, thickening with an almost tangible gravity that clings to your skin. Ahead, an archway rises, sculpted from the ancient roots entwined with tarnished brass, its latticework gleaming faintly in the dim light. Each strand seems to pulse faintly with a metallic warmth, as if the structure itself were breathing. You pause at its threshold, the starbound familiar by your side chiming softly, its light casting long, quivering shadows on the path. With a breath that steadies your racing pulse, you step forward. The moment you cross the threshold, the world bends. The chamber behind you dissolves into an infinite expanse, where the air sways unlike anything you've ever experienced before. Above stretches a dome of impossible proportions, its ceiling an artificial firmament alive with slowly spinning stars, shimmering nebulae, and orbiting planets that shed shifting spectral rays. The light dances across the ground, illuminating a sprawling, alien landscape. Winding platforms of polished stone snake through the biomechanical garden, their paths threading between crystalline trees, spiraling metallic towers, and pools of molten light that churn and bubble as though possessed by living intent. Every detail of this place feels deliberate, yet overwhelming. Towering crystalline trees rise like pillars, their translucent bark glimmering faintly, while their branches bear orbs of radiant fruit. The fruit pulses in harmony with the slow rotation of the celestial bodies above, casting beams of refracted light that ripple across the moss-covered ground. The moss shifts colors with every step, shimmering like liquid metal, responding to your movement as though it too were alive. On either side of the path, alien blooms sway gently in the invisible breeze. Their petals are not solid, but composed of vibrant filaments of light, each humming faintly in harmony with its neighbors. As the orbiting planets pass overhead, their light touches the blooms, causing them to shift hues and expand or contract, their filaments trembling with energy. The air is layered with scents, sweet, heady florals mingling with the metallic tang of machinery and an undertone of something sharp and unplaceable, a reminder of the garden's mechanical origins. The starbound familiar pads ahead, its starlit fur blending seamlessly with the kaleidoscopic glow. The path leads to a grove of crystalline trees, their branches forming an intricate lattice overhead. The filtered light creates cascading beams that seem to press gently against your skin, their touch at once alien and comforting. Reaching out, you brush a hand against the tree's cold, smooth bark. It hums faintly beneath your fingers, the sound resonating deep within your chest. Beyond the grove, the garden opens into a labyrinth of rotating platforms suspended in midair. These platforms, each unique, shift and glide as though choreographed by unseen hands. Some are overgrown with luminous moss, others etched with the glowing runes that ripple like water. Trees grow at impossible angles from their surfaces, their roots clinging as though gravity itself has been rewritten to accommodate this alien geometry. A sound catches your attention, a low melodic ticking. It grows stronger as you approach a cluster of bioluminescent vines spiraling across the ground. The vines emit a soft, harmonic tone, their vibrations stirring the air and brushing against your mind like malformed intentions. As you step closer, they recoil slightly, evaluating your intent before relaxing again, their tones deepening in approval. Then, rising above it all, the centerpiece of this realm comes into view, the celestial core. A massive sphere of polished obsidian hovers in the air, encircled by concentric gold rings that spin with unerring precision. Around it, smaller orbs drift lazily in orbit, their reflective surfaces capturing fragments of alien starscapes and nebulae. The core pulses with a deep, resonating light, casting beams of light across the garden that refract into shimmering colors when they strike the crystalline flora. The path to the core grows increasingly treacherous. Platforms tilt and rotate faster as you approach, their movements more erratic and unpredictable. The starbound familiar chirps softly, guiding you as you leap from one to the next, the moss between your feet whispering faintly with each landing. You find yourself on a platform bearing a tree whose roots grow upward, twisting into the air like grasping fingers. Beneath its crystalline canopy, a glowing orb rests nestled among the roots. Reaching for it, you feel a pulse of energy that rushes through your body, dragging you into a vision. You see the garden's origins, a sanctuary forged, not grown, beneath the watchful gaze of the celestial core. Rivers of molten light feed its mechanical veins, intertwining with the heavens above in an endless cycle of creation and destruction. The blooms and the trees, the shifting pathways, all calibrated, alive yet bound to the rhythms dictated by the core. This garden is not a paradise, but a test, its beauty masking the harsh precision of its design. The vision fades and you stagger forward, leaping onto a final platform that carries you to the core's pedestal. The starbound familiar stays close, its light merging with the radiance of the core as you approach. The pedestal hums beneath your touch, its surface etched with shifting constellations. Pressing your fingers to the glyphs, you feel their resonance guide you, a sequence of tones and vibrations that unlock the core's full power. You work your way around the core, pressing the etchings and watching how the sequence makes the core react. With the help of the starbound familiar, you work out the sequence. With the final glyph activated, the core flares brilliantly, sending a wave of energy rippling through the garden. The platforms align, forming a direct path deeper into the gearscape. The blooms open wider, their filaments trembling with light, and the crystalline trees hum in unison with the core's rhythm. The garden has recognized you and granted passage. You take a final glance at the radiant garden, its vibrant pulse lingering faintly in your chest. And then, with the starbound familiar at your side, you step into the narrowing pathway that leads beyond, the celestial core's hum fading into the quiet promise of the unknown. From one moment to the next, you are now suddenly walking within a new area. Spinning around, the biomechanical garden you were just walking through is completely gone. The new chamber inside is vast, a hollowed sphere alive with movement. Globes of light drift through the air, each one turning slowly on visible axes, their surface shimmering with symbols that shift constantly like patterns forming and breaking in a tide pool. A great table dominates the center of the chamber, its arms stretching upward, supporting rings and lenses that hover in a delicate balance. Light filters through the lenses, spinning into radiant beams that scatter across the walls, casting fleeting patterns of stars and planets. You approach cautiously, your footsteps echoing across the polished floor. As you near the table, the globes above flicker, their gentle rotation stuttering. The air grows colder, and from the light itself, shadows begin to spill, curling and stretching into forms that slither across the walls and floor. The table at the center of the chamber begins to glow, its lenses shifting as the globes above realign themselves. Symbols appear along the table's surface, faint outlines that glow brighter as you place your hands on the mechanism. The globes above spin faster, their light sharpening into distinct beams that trace patterns across the room. Your hands moved instinctively, following the rhythm of the shifting light. The symbols beneath your fingers pulse faintly, and the globe's alignment begins to change. Planets shift positions, stars reconfigure themselves, and the entire chamber hums with new energy. When the final alignment locks into place, the table emits a pulse of light that floods the chamber. The globes freeze, their symbols glowing faintly in perfect harmony. A bridge of light unfurls from the table's edge, stretching into a passage that disappears into a shadow. The familiar moves ahead, its glow flickering in the dim light of the newly formed path. You follow, your breath steady, the hum of the table fading into the distance. Whatever awaits beyond, you will face with the knowledge that you have passed the first of the Astrarium's tests. The luminous bridge carries you deeper into the labyrinthine structure of the Astrarium. The light beneath your feet is soft, its glow steady but faintly pulsing as if marking your passage through an artery of the gearscape itself. The silence around you is absolute, save for the faint hum that seems to emanate from the walls. Overhead, the celestial projections shift slowly, their patterns twisting into unfamiliar constellations that ripple and blur as though the heavens themselves are unsure of the design. The starbound familiar leads the way, its soft glow blending in with the bridge's radiance, a steady presence against the shifting shadows beyond. Then you reach the end of the path, where a great door stands, a towering monolith of burnished brass and glass. Its surface is alive with motion, symbols sighting across it like reflections on water, their meanings elusive yet faintly familiar. The door responds to your approach. A thin seam of light appears at its center, splitting the monolith in two. With a grinding growl, the halves split apart, revealing the chamber beyond. This new space is darker and smaller, more intimate than the grand celestial chamber you just left behind. Its walls curve inward, the surfaces adorned with delicate inlays of light that shimmer faintly. At the room's center, mounted on an ornate pedestal of polished brass, is a crystalline lens. It stands taller than you, its surface smooth and flawless, refracting the faint light into the prismatic fragments that dance across the chamber. The lens rotates smoothly, its movements slow and easy. You step closer, and its rotation halts, locking into place as though sensing your presence. A beam of light pierces through its center, striking the floor and casting a shadow of a great archway on the far wall. You watch, the shadow wavers and shifts, its edges blurring as new shapes emerge within it, fractals of stars and patterns of light twisting and converging. The familiar chirps softly, patting to the lens and nudging it with its nose. The beam shifts slightly, and the shadow changes again, revealing the faint outline of a doorway. You step to the pedestal, your fingers brushing against the intricate mechanisms that hold the lens aloft. It feels alive, thrumming faintly under your touch. Carefully, you adjust the lens. It resists at first, grinding against your effort, but then it moves smoothly, aligning with the shifting patterns above. The shadow solidifies, its fractured edges coalescing into an image of a gateway, a door unlike anything you've ever seen, its frame woven from spiraling light. The beam's angles lock into place, and on the far wall it trembles. With a grinding sound that echoes through the chamber, the wall splits open, revealing a spiraling staircase that descends into darkness. You descend cautiously into place. Each step resonating in the still air. The walls around you pulse faintly with a deep rhythmic glow, the light shifting in time with vibrations beneath your feet. The staircase twists endlessly, the descent growing colder with each turn, the air thick with a metallic tang that clings to your tongue. And at last, the stairs open into a vast, cavernous space. The heat strikes you first, a sudden, oppressive wave that rolls over your skin, heavy with the scent of molten metal and scorched stone. The chamber ahead is alive with motion, its walls lined with towering furnaces that spew rivers of molten light into channels carved into the floor. Above, a web of massive gears spins in deliberate unison, their teeth grinding against one another with deafening force. At the center of the chamber stands an anvil, an immense block of shimmering black metal, its surface etched with glowing symbols that shift and writhe. Surrounding it are pieces of unbroken machinery, scattered like the bones of a great beast, their jagged edges gleaming faintly in the furnace light. The starbound familiar halts at the edge of the chamber, its luminous body tense. You step forward, your boots crunching against the uneven floor, and the vibrations of the room grow sharper, more insistent. As you approach the anvil, a sound cuts through the mechanical din, a deep, grinding roar that reverberates through your chest. Massive gears the size of mountains turn slowly, grinding against one another with thunderous echoes that seem to reverberate into infinity. Strange lights dance across the machinery, celestial flames that burst to life and then fade, illuminating glimpses of otherworldly forms, beings forged from the molten metal. Great anvils carved from the raw stardust glow as hammers strike, sparks showering in arcs of liquid radiance. In the celestial domain, planets are molded, mechanical beings are mended, and power courses through the air like a living, breathing entity. Amidst this vast celestial foundry, new movement stirs, emerging from between massive pillars and rotating cogs. Tall, hulking figures step forward, masses of brass and steel, their joints grown with mechanical hunger. Their limbs are formed of spiked gears and clawed extensions, each connection a tribute to the art of brutality, designed for function and devastation. The heads of the things are featureless domes of polished metal, reflecting the forge's ambient light with only a single glowing slit running vertically down the center like a cold, unblinking eye. They step into the light, and their movements calm and heavy. The chamber thrums with a tangible dread. These reapers' steps echo against the metallic surfaces, and the great forge itself is groaning louder in response. The clockwork reapers move as one, their long, segmented arms bristling with spinning blades and serrated tools, ready to dismember any intruder to the forge. The first of the reapers spots you and charges you immediately, its bladed arms scything through the air, whistling with a metallic wail that rises above the background drone of the forge. You drop low, rolling to the side, feeling the slicing edge pass just above you. The force of the swing pulling at the air itself, almost like a gravitational tug. You retaliate with all your might, springing back up and bringing the star-forged mace crashing down in a wide, sweeping slam. The weapon connects with a deafening crash. A burst of celestial light explodes outward from the impact, radiant and blinding, tearing through the Reaper's brass-plated torso. Fractures streak across its body like the cracks in a shattered planet, molten light seeping out and hissing against the cold air. But the Reaper does not fail. It staggers, gears grinding, with the sound akin to a low growl, a fury born of cold calculation and mechanical tolerance. And without hesitation, it lunges forward again, its bladed arm sweeping horizontally. You parry with the star-forged mace, sparks erupting as the metal clashes with celestial alloy. The impact sends a shudder through your arms, but you twist the mace using the Reaper's own momentum to spin it off balance. Two more Reapers then join the fray, their movements in perfect synchronization. One Reaper lunges low while the other strikes high, like the constructs from the gateway, forcing you to react with a desperate burst of agility. You leap into the air, narrowly avoiding the low sweep while bringing the mace down on the second Reaper's arm, severing it with a burst of radiant energy. The dismembered limb crashes to the ground, gears and blades scattering, but the Reaper hardly pauses, recalculating its approach, accounting for the missing limb. The battle quickly presses you beyond your limits, the star-forged mace swinging in desperate arcs, and each strike lands with the force of collapsing stars. Yet the Reapers endure, their bodies absorbing each impact as if the punishment only serves to sharpen their resolve. Their arms sweep and lunge, blades spinning, seeking to rend flesh from bone. You duck beneath a blade strike, pivoting to drive your shoulder into the Reaper's chest, knocking it back just enough to create an opening. You bring the mace up hard, battering its torso, the celestial light bursting forth in a brilliant display that leaves the air shimmering. The starbound familiar suddenly darts out from beneath your feet, a radiant blur. The tiny creature dances between the Reapers, its shifting, iridescent light disorienting their targeting mechanisms, buying you a few precious seconds. Those seconds are enough. You draw back quickly, delivering a crushing blow to one of the Reaper's knees, forcing it to the ground as the gears of the metal snap with the force of the strike. The forge's chamber is alive with the sound of combat, the screams of tearing metal, the grinding of gears pushing you beyond their limits, and the hissing of molten light spilling from the shattered Reaper's bodies. Each of your breaths is a struggle, each swing of the star-forged mace an act of sheer will. The Reapers grow more relentless, their gears ticking faster as they recalibrate, their attacks synchronized, an endless tide pressing you into a corner. A Reaper lunges, its bladed arm thrusting forward like a spear. You sidestep and then grab its arm, twisting it with a burst of strength, forcing the Reaper to pivot. Using its own weight against it, you drive the mace into its weaker backplate, shattering its core. The celestial bursts that follow leave an imprint in the air, a dazzling trail of light. Finding the weakness, now one by one the Reapers soon fall. Each collapse in a cacophony of tortured metal, their hulking forms crashing into the forge's metallic floor. The final Reaper makes its last stand, and with every ounce of strength left in you, you bring the star-forged mace down in a devastating overhead swing. It connects, shattering the Reaper's dome-like head, the celestial energy within your weapon rippling through the gears and the mechanisms inside. And with a final wrenching groan, it collapses. Its body shudders as molten light spills from its fractured frame. The chamber's clamor subsides, leaving only the deep rhythmic thrum of the great anvils and gears. The anvil at the center of the room, a massive construct carved from celestial stone, begins to glow, brighter and brighter, as if the forge itself recognizes your triumph. Symbols etched across the surface flicker, each shifting, swirling line slowly stabilizing into a single, coherent pattern that seems to pulse with a life of its own. Exhausted, yet filled with a sense of purpose, you step forward. The star-forged mace is heavy in your hands, its celestial light dimming, the remnants of its power spent in the ferocity of the last battle. You notice the ribbons of light on the anvil match those of the star-forged mace. And you approach the glowing anvil, feeling the power emanating from it, a raw, tangible energy that resonates with the very essence of creation. Slowly, reverently, you lift the mace, placing it upon the glowing surface. The symbols etched in the anvil flare brightly, casting the forge in a blaze of light as if the stars themselves bore witness to this moment, a ritual of rebirth, an offering to the celestial forge. The hum of the chamber deepens, and the molten rivers surge, their light intensifying. The anvil begins to resonate, its surface vibrating as the symbols spread upward, consuming the weapon in a blaze of radiant light. The Bone Sovereign's crown grinds to life, and your right arm acts of its own accord. It grabs Dusk's embrace from its scabbard and hurls the weapon into the brilliance alongside the star-forged mace. The chamber quakes as the molten rivers pulse, their light climbing the walls in fiery waves that refract through the web of spinning gears overhead. The star-forged mace and Dusk's embrace rest upon the surface, glowing brighter with each passing second as the symbols etched into the anvil crawl over their forms, consuming them in threads of molten light. The molten threads rise like liquid fire, coiling around the weapons and transforming them. The flanges detach from the mace, spinning in midair before collapsing inward with a resounding clang, forming along the angular blade of Dusk's embrace in a way that gleams with dark and otherworldly brilliance. The handle elongates and its surface becomes engraved with the flowing constellations that move under your gaze. The grips phase together as if the two distinct realities were superimposed upon each other. Something new has been birthed. The core of the weapon, a seamless alloy of starlight and cursed metals from Zal, pulses faintly, its energy an amalgamation of celestial might, catastrophic curses, and the ancient mechanics of the gearscape. As the transformation completes, the anvil's hum reaches a deafening crescendo, and a final burst of light floods the chamber. You shield your eyes, the heat scalding but not unbearable, and when the brilliance subsides, the weapon lies before you, vibrating faintly as though eager to be wielded. The celestial gearblade is born. You reach out hesitantly, your fingers brushing against the hilt. A surge of energy courses through your body, electrifying and exhilarating. The weapon recognizes you, binds itself to your purpose. The blade is lighter than expected, and its balance perfect. The edges radiate a faint, golden light that cuts through the ambient gloom. The starbound familiar chirps quietly at your side, its starlit form shimmering in timbre with the blade. The moment is fleeting, because then the ruckus of the chamber shifts, its pitch growing sharper and more urgent. The molten rivers that fuel the forge begin to surge violently, their light flickering erratically. The walls tremble, gears grinding against one another with a sound like splintering bone. The air grows overwhelming, swollen with a tension that pierces your lungs. You pivot toward the edge of the chamber just as the floor beneath the anvil begins to fracture, hairline cracks racing upward in jagged spirals. From the molten depths below, a roar erupts, shaking the chamber to its foundations. The fractures widen, molten light spilling through as the shape of something immense begins to rise. The roar deepens, no longer merely a sound but a presence, raw and primal, suffused with the fury of the world too long confined. The roar of the mechanical beast is a seismic force, shaking the chamber as molten rivers surge in chaotic torrents, their light casting shifting patterns across the fractured walls. The creature rises fully now, towering above you, a construct of pure wrath. Its molten limbs stretch outward, their jagged edges trailing streams of liquid light that hiss and sputter as they drip onto the trembling floor. Its massive chest glows with a core of incandescent fire, pulsing like a heart, and the faceless golden mask tilts towards you in silent judgment. The molten sentinel's first move is immediate and brutal, a downward strike with its massive blade-like arm that cleaves through the air with a high-pitched shriek. You leap to the side just in time, the blade smashing into the forged floor. The impact sends molten debris flying, and the heat is almost sickening, rolling over you in waves that sear your exposed skin. The starbound familiar scurries to your side, its globe brightening as it chirps anxiously, its gaze locked on the towering foe. Before you can recover, the sentinel follows up with a sweeping strike, its bladed arm slicing through the air like a scythe. You duck low, the blade passing inches above your head, the rush of displaced heat stinging your face. You retaliate immediately, surging forward with the celestial gear blade in both hands. The weapon hums with celestial energy, its radiant edge slicing through the molten brass of the sentinel's limb with a resounding crack. A burst of liquid fire spills from the wound, splattering onto the floor where it cools into jagged glassy fragments. The sentinel recoils slightly, its gears grinding loudly in protest. The grinding sound shifts into a guttural roar as it recalibrates, its molten core glowing brighter. It raises its other arm, a spiked chain of spinning gears, and it lashes it toward you in a spiraling arc. The weapon moves with terrifying speed, the spinning gears throwing off molten sparks that scorch the air. You dive to the side, the chain striking the ground where you stood with an explosive impact that fractures the stone. Rolling back onto your feet, you swipe the gear blade upward, intercepting the chains as it retracts. The blade meets the spinning gears with a clash of sparks and light, the force of the collision reverberating up your arm. The sentinel growls again, its molten core flaring as it swings the chain a second time, this time aiming to wrap it around you. The starbound familiar leaps into action, darting in front of you with a burst of starlight. The sudden brilliance disorients the sentinel, its chain missing the mark and striking the ground harmlessly. Taking advantage of the moment, you charge forward, your boots sliding slightly on the molten slick floor as you bring the gear blade down in a heavy two-handed strike aimed at the sentinel's leg. The blade bites deep, carving through layers of molten brass and exposed gears. The sentinel lurches, its balance faltering as the damaged limb gives way. Its massive form crashes to one knee, the impact shaking the chamber and sending shockwaves through the molten rivers. You press the attack, targeting the exposed joint with a rapid series of strikes. Each blow sends fragments of molten metal flying, the gear blade's celestial energy carving through the sentinel's reinforced mechanisms like a comet tearing through the night sky. But the sentinel is far from defeated. Its massive hand lashes out, claws of molten brass snapping toward you with startling speed. You dodge away, the claws grazing your shoulder, leaving a searing line of pain that radiates through your arm. The force of the strike sends you stumbling, and the sentinel seizes the opportunity to rise again, its damaged leg groaning as molten light spills from the fractured joints. It roars once more, the sound deafening, a cacophony that shakes loose shards of stone from the chamber's ceiling. Gears grind furiously as the creature's molten core pulses with renewed intensity. The chained weapon retracts into its arm, replaced by a new mechanism, an immense piston-like extension that glows white-hot. The sentinel slams the piston into the ground and a shockwave ripples outward, the molten rivers erupting in geysers of liquid fire. You barely have time to react, leaping onto a nearby chunk of stone as the ground beneath you is consumed by molten light. The heat is unbearable and the acrid stench of scorched stone fills your lungs. The familiar darts between the geysers, its starlit form unharmed by the searing heat, and it lets out a sharp trill, drawing the sentinel's attention away from you. Seizing the moment, you leap from your perch, the gear blade raised high. The weapon arcs downward, its radiant edge carving through the sentinel's shoulder. The impact releases a blinding burst of light and the sentinel staggers backwards, its molten brass arm hanging limp, nearly severed from its body. It retaliates with a desperate swipe of its remaining arm, the claws raking through the air with a lethal intent. You duck low, the claws passing just over your head, and thrust the gear blade upward into the sentinel's exposed chest. The blade pierces the molten core, and for a moment, the entire chamber freezes. The sentinel's roar transforms into a low, guttural growl, its molten core flaring wildly as the gear blade's celestial energy clashes with the creature's fiery heart. The light in the chamber grows blinding, the molten rivers surging violently as the sentinel thrashes, its massive limbs swinging wildly in all directions. One of the strikes catches you off guard, a backhanded swipe that sends you hurtling across the chamber. You crash into the fractured stone floor, the impact jarring but not totally disabling. Gritting your teeth, you rise unsteadily, the gear blade still humming faintly in your grasp. The starbound familiar rushes to your side, its chirps urgent, its glowing eyes fixed on the thrashing sentinel. The creature is unraveling, its molten core flares brighter and brighter, the light seeping through the cracks in its brass shell. Gears burst apart, their jagged edges raining down like shrapnel, and molten rivers boil furiously, spilling over their channels and flooding the chamber. Summoning the last reserves of your strength, you charge forward. The sentinel's movements are slower now, its limbs jerking erratically as the internal mechanisms fail. You leap onto its damaged leg, climbing quickly as molten brass sears your gloves. The familiar leaps alongside you, its glow intensifying as it releases bursts of starlight that disrupt the sentinel's thrashing. Reaching the sentinel's chest, you drive the gear blade deep into its molten core. The blade sinks in with a deafening roar, and the chamber explodes in light. The sentinel convulses violently, its massive body collapsing under its own weight as the molten core implodes. The light consumes everything, a blinding wave of energy that surges through the chamber, leaving only silence in its wake. And when the light fades, the sentinel lies in ruins, its molten form hardened into jagged glassy fragments. The chamber is still, the molten river is reduced to faintly glowing embers. The starbound familiar nuzzles your leg, the soft light comforting in the aftermath. A path forward is revealed, an archway of darkened brass, its surface faintly shimmering with residual heat. You take a deep breath, gripping the celestial gear blade tightly, and you run through, escaping the rising molten metal, leaving behind the echoes of battle, fading into the depths of the gearscape. The archway swallows you whole, its darkened brass shimmering faintly as you pass through, leaving the molten chaos of the forge behind. The air shifts immediately, cooling with each step, the acrid stench of scorched metal replaced by a crisp, sterile tang that prickles your nostrils. The path ahead is narrow, carved from seamless stone, its walls veined with faintly glowing lines of light that pulse in rhythmic waves. The starbound familiar pads silently beside you, its glow subdued as if sensing the tension that hangs heavily in the air. The corridor curves downward, spiraling into the depths of the gearscape. With each step, the hum of distant machinery grows louder, a mechanical symphony that resonates in your chest. The faint pulsing veins along the wall begin to brighten, their patterns shifting into complex, swirling designs that seem almost alive. You run your fingers along them as you descend, the surface cool to the touch, but it vibrates faintly as though something beneath the stone is alive and restless. The path widens, opening into a cavernous space that defies logic. Above, vast arches stretch into darkness, their surface adorned with intricate interlocking mechanisms that tick and spin in perfect harmony. The room glows faintly, lit by an ethereal light that emanates from a massive sphere suspended in the center, a golden orb encased in a lattice of crystalline spires and gleaming brass. The orb rotates slowly, beams of light refracting through the crystalline lattice to scatter across the chamber. The floor beneath your boots is a mosaic of shifting panels, their surfaces engraved with countless runes that shift and flow like living ink. The patterns ripple outward from the orb, creating pathways that seem to realign as you move. The very architecture of the chamber resists being fully understood, its design alien and incomprehensible. The starbound familiar halts abruptly, its glowing eyes fixed on the sphere. A quiet ringing vibrates through the air, rising in pitch as the orb's rotation accelerates. The light intensifies, refracting wildly as the lattice begins to shift and open, revealing glimpses of the orb's molten core, a miniature sun contained within a delicate web of impossible design. The golden sphere at the chamber's center slows, its rotation steadying as the light within it dims slightly. The mosaic floor beneath your feet ripples again, its patterns rearranging themselves into a single, clear path that stretches toward the open doorway on the far side of the room. The starbound familiar chirps softly, its glow flickering as it presses close to your side. The Bone Sovereign's crown stirs, its fragments tighten around your other wrist, their jagged edges digging into your skin. The air around you grows colder, and the faint hum of the chamber is replaced by a low, guttural whisper. You glance down at the crown, its bone-like shards gleaming with a faint unnatural light. A presence stirs within it, ancient and insistent, pressing against your thoughts like a voice just out of reach. But you ignore it, for now. The doorway leads to another corridor, this one darker and more foreboding. The walls are rougher here, their surfaces jagged and uneven, as though precision of the gearscape's design had begun to break down. The air is colder, each breath filling your lungs with a metallic tang of decay. The starbound familiar hesitates at the threshold, its glow dimming as it lets out a low and uncertain trill. The corridor twists and narrows, the walls pressing closer until they feel like they're alive, pulsing faintly with a rhythm that is neither mechanical nor organic, but something in between. The Bone Sovereign's crown tightens, its shards throbbing against your wrist as it whispers, and grows louder. They are clearer now, no longer disjointed murmurs, but words, fragments of a language you do not know but somehow understand. The corridor opens suddenly into a vast and circular chamber. The air is heavy with an oppressive stillness, broken only by the faint ticking of unseen mechanisms. At the center of the chamber is a massive construct, a shifting mass of interlocking gears and glowing glyphs that seem to defy gravity. It rotates slowly, its shape constantly changing like a puzzle in the process of solving itself. And at its base, a figure awaits. Its form is both human and machine, a towering silhouette of polished metal and angular geometry, seamlessly interlocking like the segments of an intricate puzzle. The chamber seems to bend around it, as if its presence exerts a gravity of its own, a distortion that pulls at the edges of reality. Its face is a blank and reflective surface, but as you gaze at it, faint patterns begin to emerge, shifting symbols, ancient ruins that flicker in and out of existence. Its body is adorned with lines of glowing light that pulse in time with the chamber's ticking, each pulse accompanied by a subtle vibration that seems to synchronize with your heartbeat. Spiked protrusions extend from its shoulders and elbows, and its legs are jointed in a way that suggests both elegance and lethality, giving it an almost insect-like grace. The architect does not move as you enter, but its presence is overwhelming, a silent guardian whose existence alone fills the room with weight, making the air thick and resistant, pressing against your skin and mind. There is an audible hum that seems to emanate from within it, a resonance that resonates with the core of your being, making every breath an effort, every thought sluggish, as though it is trying to dominate not only the physical space but the very essence of your will. The Bone Sovereign's crown pulses violently, its shards biting into your wrist as the whispers rise to a deafening crescendo. They are no longer distant voices, but screaming words, pulling at your thoughts and pushing into your consciousness. The crown's energy surges through you, cold and invasive, like icy water coursing through your veins. It is not just pain, it is an awakening of something ancient and malevolent within you. The impulses of the crown come alive, each whisper an echo of age-old hunger that has lain dormant, now ravenous for release. You feel it clawing at your sanity, urging you to let go, to surrender to its will. The sensation is overwhelming, like drowning in an endless sea of darkness and power. You stagger, clutching your arm, the pain almost blinding. Yet there is a terrible allure to it, a promise of unimaginable power if only you would yield. The architect lifts its head, a slow and deliberate motion that feels as if it has all the time in the world, and the light in the chamber shifts with it, casting sharp, angular shadows that twist and converge. The architect's presence presses down on you like a suffocating blanket, a force of undeniable power that makes each breath a laborious task. The angular form moves with careful precision, stepping down from its pedestal of gears and glyphs, each motion accompanied by the sharp clink of metal joints and the deep, vibrating drone of energy that reverberates through the chamber, making the floor beneath you tremble. Its face, a blank and reflective surface, turns toward you, and for a moment, you see yourself, warped and fragmented as though you are being observed through 1,000 prisms. The image is disorienting, a web of twisting reflections that makes your stomach lurch and your vision swim, leaving you with an unsettling sense of vulnerability. The Bone Sovereign's crown writhes on your wrist, its jagged shards piercing deeper into your skin. Cold necromantic energy floods your veins, and the whispers within your mind rise to a maddening cacophony. They're screaming now, voices desperate, voices pleading. They demand release, and the command is undeniable, almost instinctive. Unleash us! Your knees buckle, the ground beneath you tilting as the crown pulses again, sending shadowy tendrils spiraling upward. You feel a cold sweat break out across your skin, your body trembling under the weight of the crown's impulses. The sensation is like icy claws sinking into your bones, each pulse an agonizing reminder of the power trying to escape you. The tendrils move like serpents, curling through the air toward the architect, black and hungry, and you feel both exhilaration and fear. Exhilaration at the raw power flowing from you, fear at how little control you have over it. The whispers are even louder now, filling your ears with the desperate demands, drowning out everything else. For the first time, the towering figure reacts, its head tilts sharply, and the light running along its limbs flicker, responding to the approaching darkness. The shadows touch it, wrapping around the metal limbs, and the glyphs on its body flare brightly, repelling the tendrils with bursts of radiant energy. You feel the backlash through the connection, a searing jolt that makes your vision blur, and a primal guttural scream tears itself from your throat as the crown's hunger surges, demanding more, and the architect moves. It does not charge, it does not lunge, it shifts. A simple movement, yet impossibly fast. One moment it stands across the chamber, and the next, its reflective face mere inches from your own. A long segmented arm sweeps toward you, the edges gleaming with an impossibly sharp light. You twist aside, barely avoiding the strike, the blade grazing your shoulder and leaving behind a cold numbness that quickly spreads. You retaliate, the celestial gear blade slicing through the air in a sweeping motion. The architect steps back fluidly, its movements precise, and each action efficient and inhuman. The tip of your blade strikes the edge of its arm, and the impact reverberates through your bones. The sound echoes through the chamber, a deafening chime like a cathedral's bell being struck, the force sending a shockwave across the space. The starbound familiar, a glowing entity of swirling starlight, leaps into the fray, its claws slashing at the architect's lower limbs. The claws tear into the metallic surface, leaving a faint, glowing scratch that sizzles and sparks as if resisting the intrusion. The architect glances down, its blank face reflecting the familiar's glow with an eerie, detached calmness. With a mechanical grace, it raises one foot and stomps the ground. The impact reverberates through the chamber, sending a shockwave of energy that visibly distorts the air around it. You feel the force rip through your body like being struck by a wall of pure pressure, and both you and the familiar are thrown backwards. You crash into the shifting platforms of the chamber, the metal beneath you groaning under the impact. The room itself begins to change, responding directly to the architect's will. The gears lining the walls grind and rotate, rearranging themselves into new configurations. Platforms rise and fall, creating a chaotic landscape of twisting paths and sudden voids. The glyphs on the floor light up, their patterns swirling like rivers of molten starlight, forcing you to move constantly, evading the energy that threatens to consume you. The architect steps onto one of the rising platforms, its body dissolving into shards of light that reappear on a higher level. The shards seem to pulse with an eerie luminescence, as if the architect is momentarily becoming one with the ambient energy of the chamber. From its elevated position, it raises both arms, and the air around it fractures audibly, like the cracking of an enormous sheet of ice. Segments of the chamber peel away, twisting and contorting as space itself seems to warp in response. Jagged shards of glass-like energy spiral toward you, each shard vibrating violently, leaving behind ripples in the air as they tear through reality itself. The intensity of the attack makes your vision blur, and the light scattering in every direction. You can feel the weight of each shard as though they are pressing against your very soul. You raise the symbiotic crown, its roots writhing from your wrist to form a shield of dark pulsating energy. The shards strike the shield with explosive force, each impact jarring your entire body. The roots tighten their hold on you, feeding on the residual energy, growing thicker and more aggressive, as if thriving on the conflict. The architect turns its faceless head towards you, its segmented arm lifting to strike. You see an opening, and the Twilight Crown's energy surges through you. The iridescent scales along your leg extend, sharpening into obsidian blades. You feel the power coursing through your muscles, and each movement is amplified by the energy. You sprint forward, your footsteps echoing against the shifting platforms, your heart pounding in your ears. You leap onto the shifting platform, feeling the metal beneath your feet vibrate as it moves, using the momentum to propel yourself toward the architect. The gear blade descends in a fierce swing. The celestial edge blazing with a golden light, the energy radiating heat that warms your face even in the cold chamber. The blade connects with the architect's torso, the impact sending a shockwave through your arms, rattling your bones as the construct's reflective surface splinters and cracks. A surge of resistance pushes back, almost like the construct itself is rejecting the damage, but the force of your strike cuts through, leaving a jagged fracture across its chest. The blow lands. The architect staggers, its reflective surface splintering into countless fractures, each crack spreading like a web across its metallic skin. The light within its body dims momentarily, flickering erratically as if struggling to stay alive. The glyphs etched along its limbs blink and pulse in a chaotic rhythm, their once synchronized glow now broken and faltering. You press the attack, each swing of the gear blade carving through its defenses, the golden edge leaving trails of molten light that burn and sizzle as they slice into the architect's armored shell. The architect forms shudder violently, fragments falling away like shards of a shattered mirror, clattering to the ground with a discordant ringing. Despite the relentless assault, it does not falter for long, and with a sudden and almost unnatural fluidity, it pivots sharply, its elongated arms splintering into a fan of blades, each one gleaming with a wicked serrated edge. The blades sweep toward you in a deadly formation, a blur of metallic death. You leap backwards, the air whistling past your ears, narrowly avoiding the strike, and as you land, the platform beneath you shifts without warning, gears grinding as it drops, throwing you off balance. You feel the metal beneath your feet groan, and the sudden drop sending a jolt of fear through your body as you struggle to regain your footing. The Bone Sovereign's crown pulses again, more violently this time, and the voices in your mind become insistent and relentless. The demand is almost irresistible, the pressure in your skull building, the crown tightening like a vice around your wrist. The pain is searing, spreading from your wrist to your entire arm, making your muscles tense and spasm. You feel your heartbeat pounding in your temples, each pulse pushing you closer to the brink of submission. You hesitate, the gear blade trembling in your grip as sweat drips down your brow, your vision narrowing to the fractured visage before you. The architect advances, its fractured face reflecting thousands of versions of your indecision, each one more broken than the last. Every reflection is a reminder of your vulnerability, of the tenuous grasp you hold over your own will, the faces staring back at you distorted by hesitation and fear. And then the crown seizes control. Dark tendrils explode from your wrist, spiraling outward in a frenzy. They latch onto the architect, burrowing into its splintered body, seeking out the light within. The construct jerks violently, its movements erratic as the tendrils warm deeper, feeding on the radiant energy. The glyphs flare brightly, a desperate attempt to fight back, but the crown is relentless, tightening its grip until the architect's light fades and flickers. The crown's voice speaks clearly now, no longer a whisper, but a commanding presence in your mind.
We are not your tool. You are ours.
The truth hits you with brutal clarity. The Bone Sovereign's crown has never been your ally. It has always been lurking, observing and biding its time. Its hunger knows no bounds, and now it seizes the opportunity to consume and control. The tendrils swell, growing thicker and more forceful, dragging the architect toward you despite its struggle. You desperately try to sever the connection, to pull away, but the crown's grip only tightens. Its shards dig in deeper, blinding pain shooting through your arm as it asserts dominance, turning you into its unwilling vessel. The architect twists violently, its reflective face fracturing with an ear-splitting crack that reverberates through the chamber. Shards fall away to reveal an empty and hollow core, a swirling void of light and shadow, a chaotic storm of opposing forces colliding and coalescing. Its body begins to collapse, folding inward as the crown's power hungrily devours it. Tendrils tighten their grip, the light within the architect flaring brightly, fighting back in a last, desperate struggle. The glyphs etched across its limbs burn with a blinding radiance, their energy erupting in flashes that sear your eyes, but the crown's hunger is still relentless. The architect's form shudders, convulsing as its defenses falter, each flare of light dimmer than the last. You feel the power coursing through the tendrils, an overwhelming surge that floods your senses, making your heart race and your mind reel. The architect lets out a sound, a deep, resonant wail that echoes with an almost mournful quality as its body crumples further, dragged inch by inch into the insatiable grasp of the crown. The radiant glow flickers, sputters, and then fades entirely, swallowed by the endless darkness of the Bone Sovereign's crown, leaving behind a gaping emptiness. The chamber, once alive with the architect's energy, falls silent, the only sound the distant hum of gears, and now devoid of their master's presence. You fall to your knees, the weight of the crown pressing down with almost unbearable force, its jagged edges glowing faintly with the stolen light, each shard thrumming with a dark and insidious energy. Your entire body feels drained, as if the crown has pulled every ounce of strength from your veins, leaving you trembling and weak. The starbound familiar approaches cautiously, its glow dimmed to a mere flicker, its gaze wary and full of concern as it circles you, each movement slow. The whispers have quieted, but their presence still lingers, an oppressive pressure gnawing at the edges of your mind, like a parasite that refuses to let go. You can feel their intentions, dormant for now, but never truly gone, a reminder that the struggle is far from over. Ahead, the room shifts one last time. The golden light that once illuminated the architect coalesces into a single point, revealing a pedestal at the chamber's center. Upon it rests a crown, its shape shifting and twisting like liquid starlight frozen in time. You rise unsteadily, every muscle in your body aching under the weight of exhaustion. The Bone Sovereign's crown is whispering again, a low and insistent murmur that makes your skin crawl and your heart pound with unease. The sound is almost alive, a slithering presence that coils around your thoughts. You reach out, your hand trembling, each movement feeling like a monumental effort as your fingers inch closer to the crown. The moment you make contact, an explosion of light engulfs the chamber. It is not merely illumination, but a raw and primal force, a tidal wave of energy that seizes your senses, flooding your vision with blinding brilliance, and pulling you into a realm beyond comprehension. The force crashes over you, a symphony of light and power that strips away any sense of direction or time, leaving you suspended in an overwhelming torrent of energy. Your body feels as if it is both disintegrating and being remade. Every cell is vibrating with an intensity that borders on pain, and your mind struggles to hold on amidst the chaos. The ground beneath you dissolves, replaced by an endless expanse of shifting stars and spiraling galaxies. Time fractures, space folds inward, and your body feels both weightless and impossibly heavy, as though every atom is being unraveled and rewoven in an instant. The starbound familiar lets out a distressed trill, its glowing form flickering as it struggles against the storms of energy. The Bone Sovereign's crown, however, thrives, its jagged fragments gleaming with a malevolent light, feeding greedily on the chaos. The tendrils are wrapped around your wrist, and they surge outward, intertwining with the energy pouring from the new crown.
More.
The Bone Sovereign's crown whispers, its voice sharp and unrelenting.
Feed
Us.
Expand
Us. Break the barrier of what is possible. The symbiosis between the crowns is violent, each feeding on another in a horrifying cycle that threatens to tear you apart. Your body convulses, muscles seizing uncontrollably as waves of energy surge through you, pushing the limits of your endurance. Your vision blackens, dark spots swimming across your eyes as the twilight crown flares to life with an almost blinding brilliance. The iridescent scales ripple across your legs, spreading upward in jagged cascades of raw energy that burn and freeze simultaneously, leaving your nerves caught between agonizing heat and numbing cold. The sensation is unbearable, skin cracking under the strain, the scales writhing and pulsing as if they have a life of their own. The symbiotic crown joins the fray, its dark roots burrowing deeper, twisting through your muscles and veins, drawing strength from the maelstrom of power. The pressure is immense, your entire body feeling as though it might split apart at any moment, the roots vibrating with an almost primal hunger and greedily siphoning the energy coursing through you. The air crackles with an electric intensity, every breath like inhaling shards of ice as the crowns wage their terrible battle within you, each vying for dominance while you struggle to remain whole. And then just as the storm reaches its crescendo, the world snaps back into focus. You find yourself standing on a narrow platform suspended in a void of swirling light. The crown of fractured infinities floats before you, its form still shifting and warping, but now calm, its energy contained. The starbound familiar hovers nearby, its glow stabilizing, though its eyes remain wary. You reach for the crown again, this time with purpose. As your hand closes around it, the whispers of the Bone Sovereign grow louder, the crown tightening around your wrist, its tendrils coiling upward toward the new crown. The crown of fractured infinity resists, its shifting form radiating an overwhelming presence, pushing back the Bone Sovereign's encroachment. The clash of wills ignites within you, and the battle that plays out in your mind as much as your body. You feel the Bone Sovereign's hunger, its insatiable desire to consume and control, but the crown of fractured infinity is not simply an object of power. It is a force of nature, a nexus of reality itself. To claim it is to bind your essence to its limitless potential. but also to its burden. The starbound familiar chirps sharply, its voice cutting through the chaos, leaping onto your shoulder, pressing its glowing form against the side of your head. Its warmth seeps into you, a grounding presence that pulls you back from the brink of disillusion. You focus every ounce of your being, dedicated to resisting the Bone Sovereign's influence. The tendrils fight back, writhing as they try to maintain their hold, the crown shards digging deeper into your flesh. The pain a blinding, searing reminder of its power. But you refuse to give in, drawing strength from the starbound familiar's unwavering presence, its light a beacon against the darkness. Your muscles ache, your mind feels like it's splitting under the pressure, but you push harder. The Bone Sovereign's whispers falter, their once commanding voices turning into desperate murmurs, the tendrils slowly losing their grip. With a final surge of will, you sever the connection, the crown's energy recoiling from your body. It shrieks, a piercing, otherworldly wail that echoes in your mind, fading slowly into the void as its influence wanes, leaving behind an empty and hollow silence. The crown of fractured infinity glows brighter, its form stabilizing as you take it fully into your grasp. The moment it settles on your brow, the void between you changes. Paths of light unfurl in all directions, infinite and shifting, leading to realms unseen and worlds untouched. The crown's power courses through you now, a torrent of possibilities flooding your mind. You see pathways that bend and twist through time and space, doors that lead to forgotten eras, and threads of existence that intersect and diverge like rivers in a vast and cosmic sea. The starbound familiar chirps softly, its glowing eyes meeting yours with a knowing intensity. There is an understanding there, a silent acknowledgement of the chaos you have endured. Its presence is more than just comforting, it is a steady anchor, a warmth that always grounds you amidst the overwhelming tides of power. The soft glow of its body pulses gently in sync with your breathing, as if reminding you that you are not alone, that there is still a part of you that remains unbroken and true, despite the storms you have weathered. Yet the Bone Sovereign's crown remains silent. The fragments around your wrist are inert, their jagged edges cold against your skin, but you can feel it. A presence, quiet now, but not gone. The platform beneath you begins to dissolve, the light around you shifting into a cascading spiral that pulls you upward. The gearscape's vast mechanisms reappear, their spinning gears orbiting spheres bathed in radiant glow. The pathway before you leads back to the entrance, but is no longer a journey of escape. You move with purpose, each step guided by the knowledge of the crown of fractured infinity. The trials of the gearscape have shaped you, they have owned your will and revealed the depths of your resolve. Yet the burden of the crown is heavy, and the power immense, and its cost is unknowable. As you cross the threshold and emerge once more into the vastness of the cosmos, the starbound familiar at your side, you understand the truth. This was only the beginning. The paths before you are infinite, each one a doorway to a new trial, a new mystery. The gearscape's secrets may be behind you, but the universe itself awaits, its endless expanse ready to test the limits of your strength, your resolve, and your humanity. You adjust the crown on your head, its shifting light casting faint shadows across your face. The starbound familiar chirps softly, its eyes fixed on the horizon as stars above shimmer and shift, their patterns rearranging themselves in a cosmic dance. The gearscape fades away, and its whispers carried away on the wind of 1,000 worlds. As the crown pulses with energy, you feel it begin to shift. The pressure on your brow fades, and you sense the crown's presence moving. Slowly, it travels down your body, its energy flowing like liquid starlight spiraling down your torso and coiling around your leg. The sensation is both strange and familiar, the weight of its power settling as it wraps around your left ankle. It feels as though it is anchoring you, grounding you to the connection of the cosmos, its presence now a steady pulse that merges with your heartbeat. The crown of fractured infinity has found a new place, its power a constant reminder of the boundless possibilities. Ahead of you, the celestial observatory begins to take shape, an ethereal construct suspended in the swirling void. You step forward, feeling the crown's energy align with the observatory, as if inviting you to explore further. The observatory is vast, its floor made of shimmering crystal that seems to hold the entire cosmos within. As you move through the space, ethereal windows open before you, each one offering a glimpse into a different world or timeline. You see a realm bathed in perpetual twilight, where towering structures made of glass and stone reach upward, a sky filled with swirling nebula. Another window reveals a lush forest, each leaf glowing with a soft inner light, while beings of pure energy dance between the trees. Timelines unfurl before you, scenes of what was, what is, and what could be. You see yourself, sometimes triumphant and sometimes broken, each version a reflection of the choices yet to come. There is a world where you stand victorious on a battlefield of shattered constructs, and another where you wander alone through desolate ruins, the crown's light flickering weakly. The observatory shows you not only the paths that you might take, but the consequences of each, a reminder of the weight of what you bear. The starbound familiar floats beside you, its gaze fixed on the shifting images, its glow pulsating softly. It chirps, a sound that seems to echo with curiosity and understanding. You take a deep breath, feeling the vastness of possibilities stretching out before you, each one a doorway waiting to be open. The Celestial Observatory is a place of infinite potential, a reminder of the boundless universe that now lies at your feet, ready to be explored. Acting purely on a hunch, you open a door and step inside, and the door shuts behind you.